Software entitlements are configured against software license records in ServiceNow. If I open up this record, you can see that you can configure entitlements for users or devices. Note that while the interface here states asset entitlement, it is truly device entitlement, and that the records you select to entitle are actually configuration items. You have some options to create entitlements right here in the software record. You can do it from the list by inserting a new row and typing in the new value. Or you can go to Add Entitlement, which gives you a screen to add that appropriate entitlement. Now, either of these would be tedious if you have more than a handful of entitlements to add at any given time. But there is a better way to handle this if you have a lot of entitlements to bring into ServiceNow at once. While you normally would access this entitlement information through the software license record, because it is related information, it actually lives in another table. And you can see these tables under Asset Management Software, User License Entitlement, and Asset License Entitlement. Now, you're still not going to want to enter in the information into these tables manually. What you would do is use an import set to bring that data into one of these tables in bulk. And just a note here, if you're not a system administrator or don't have the appropriate roles to work with import sets, you should enlist the aid of your sysadmin to help you out here. Now, if you look at these tables, there's really two pieces of information that you need to import. You've got the software license record, which is listed as licensed by, and then you have either assigned to or allocated to, depending on if you need to entitle the user or device, respectively. Now here, I'm going to bring up, for a particular license, I'm looking at the software entitlements for QuickTime Pro. And I have some more entitlements that I want to make for QuickTime Pro. And so I've got a spreadsheet that I'm going to work with. I've got my assigned to and licensed by identified here. The assigned to value needs to match the user's name in ServiceNow in the user record, which is actually the first name and the last name. And then the licensed by is the display name of the software license record. So if I go out here, it's the display name listed here. This includes the asset tag and the model name. Now, the hardest part of this process becomes filling in that spreadsheet. You can get this information from the software license record and copy and paste it into the spreadsheet. So I'll grab that here and copy it into my spreadsheet. Now, if I tried to copy it into multiple rows at once, it wouldn't let me. But if I grab it once, and I know you can see I have it there, but if I grab it once, now I can select multiple rows and paste it into all of them at once. That's a lot faster than adding them in individually. To get user or device names, you could apply filters to a user list or a CI list in ServiceNow and copy that information into the spreadsheet. It then becomes easy to get that list of users based on a location or some other information or devices in a department to create your entitlements quickly. Okay, so now we have the spreadsheet. I'm going to save this spreadsheet, and then we need to get to the import. So we go to our import sets, load data. Going to create a new import set. It's going to be user entitlements, and I'm going to choose my QuickTime spreadsheet that we just updated, and I'm going to go. So it's bringing that data into a temporary location, temporary table, and then we need to create a transform map for this information. This is going to be a pretty simple transform, but we need to give it a name, and it's going to be user entitlement transform. Our target table is going to be user entitlement. ALM entitlement user is the full name if you'd like. And then auto map the matching fields. So we'll have ServiceNow do the work to map up those matching fields. Now there are a couple other items that I recommend you work with here when you set up your transform map. The first is to set both of the fields to coalesce. What that means is that it's going to prevent you from importing multiple entitlements for a single user or device. If you do, for some reason, need to create multiple entitlements for a single user or device, you can then manage that as an exception, which is a whole lot easier than dealing with the other way around, where you have it recreating multiple entitlements for that single user or device. With these set to coalesce, ServiceNow recognizes that the entitlement exists based on both of those fields being the same as something that exists, and it really has no true effect on the situation. The other item that I recommend is, if you don't see it already, add this choice action field to your field maps list and set the value for that to reject. What that is going to do is, because the information that we are working with in the user entitlement table, both of these fields are reference fields, one to the user table and one to the software license table. It's related data. And if that information does not already exist in ServiceNow, you don't want the import to create it. And so this will effectively reject any user that doesn't exist already in the database or any software license that does not already exist in the database. And then I'll show you how to handle that in just a little bit. Okay, so now with this set up, I'm just going to save to make sure everything is good. Now you can run the transform. But before I run the transform, I do want to point out a couple of things. I'm going to hold down Command on my Mac here. You can do Control on a bookmark I have for my software license. Just refresh it to make sure that it is the latest data. And show you that we have 108 current user entitlements for Apple QuickTime Pro. Also, in the spreadsheet I loaded, I have one user here that does not already exist in this ServiceNow instance, and that's me, Ben Sweetser. I also have a software license that doesn't exist, and it's got one slight little difference in that it says QuickTime Pro 8 and not 7. I made this a subtle difference on purpose to show you how important it is to be careful that the values that you have in here are correct. So we've got two lines here that, if we've set everything up appropriately, should not import. Besides that, we have a lot of records here. Some of these already do exist. In fact, just to take a name, if we go back over to ServiceNow and look, Dwayne Katita. Dwayne Katita already exists. So we've got a number of entitlements that do already exist in here already. So those, because the coalesce is set up, those will effectively be ignored for all intents and purposes. So now run the transform. And it runs and it runs. And now if I go to that software license record, I'll do a refresh here. Now there are 148 entitlements. So I just set up my entitlements very, very quickly. I do not, if I go to the next page, notice Ben Sweetser's not there. So, and if I go a couple pages out here, we'll see that Dwayne Katita only exists once. So the the coalesce did its job, and we have success. We imported that successfully. Now, I mentioned those items that we set to reject, and we did that. We had a couple of examples on purpose. If I go to the System Import Sets Advanced Transform History so that I can manage those exceptions, I can look at the history for that transform that I just ran. I'll look at the latest one here, and I can see that there were a couple of import set row errors. So the import succeeded, but there are a couple of row errors. And if I just hover over these, I can see what the error message is. In this case, the reference value field was rejected for Ben Sweetser. That's because I don't exist. And on the other one, the reference field value for licensed by was rejected. And in that case, it was because Apple QuickTime Pro 8 does not exist as a license as well. Another thing to note is that you cannot add more entitlements than you have rights. So if I go to that software license record, there are 150 rights here. If I tried to import more than that, I would also receive an error, and that would be something to deal with, and you would see the information about in the history. Device entitlements work the same, but on the asset entitlement table, just make sure that you use CI names for the allocated to value and don't try to use asset names. And that should get you what you need to quickly set up entitlements in your environment. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.